And you're live.
All right. Give me a countdown.
There is no countdown. We're live. We're going.
Just give me a countdown. Mitchell, give me a countdown.
3, 2, 1, go.
Hello and welcome to a special episode of the Moorpark Sportscast. My name is Danny Stepanovich, sports desk editor at themoorparkreporter.com. And we're coming at you midweek because the Los Angeles Dodgers are 2020 World Series champions. That just sounds weird to say. Kennedy, how happy are you that we're recording midweek because the Dodgers won?
Happy that we're recording midweek because it counts as a story, and that's one less thing that I have to do. Not really happy that the Dodgers won because they're the Dodgers. I think it's more fair to go to Mitchell and let him just, gush and celebrate.
Yeah, always a good time to be recording, especially midweek. Even more special now that the Dodgers are 2020 World Champs. It was a long time coming, as President of Baseball Ops Andrew Friedman said. He said, sorry for the delay, but 8 years later in this run, the Dodgers are champs, and it feels good to celebrate. LA is wild right now.
We got a lot to get into today. We're going to start with just first reactions. What's your takeaway, Mitchell, to the Dodgers actually winning it for the first time in 32 years?
Danny, it's just a relief as a Dodger fan to see Julio strike out the last batter of the game and win the World Series. We've been so close so many times, and especially with the events of this year, with the passing of Kobe, an LA icon, the postponement of the season, who we didn't even know if we were going to play, and of course the allegations coming to light and being proven that the Houston Astros cheated us in 2017. It just feels good to get what this team rightfully deserves, and it feels good as a Dodger fan to watch Kirsch lift that commissioner's trophy and really just cement himself as the greatest left-hand pitcher of this century.
I don't know if we want to go that crazy, but look, the LA Dodgers were in the World Series the past 3 of the 4 years. They are obviously a great franchise that has a lot of money and a lot of talent, and it really was only a matter of time before they lift the trophy. It was a good series. It was fun. It may not have been the New York Yankees versus the Dodgers, what, America wanted, but Tampa Bay is, the Moneyball team. They use analytics. They play with small contracts. They are kind of the opposite of the Dodgers because the Dodgers also play Moneyball, but they have a lot more money. All the money in Moneyball is capitalized for the Dodgers. So it was just, as a neutral, and I guess I'm neutral, even though I hate the Dodgers, it was a fun series.
Just from the beginning, this felt like their year. They opened up as a World Series championship favorites with the Yankees, and they just didn't disappoint this year. They scored the most amount of runs. They were the third clutchest team in the MLB. And one of the takeaways for that I had, a big takeaway for this season, was that their bullpen actually stepped up this year. They were able to lean on the bullpen. Trennan was huge in Game 5. McGee, Floro had a good outing last game. And then they were able to lean on the rookies, Gratterall and Gonzalez, and including Dustin May in the bullpen. He had a great outing, relieving Kershaw in Game 4. But and then there was Baez. This was just their year. May and Gonsolin, they stepped up, especially after Price. The beginning of the year, he opted out, and 2 rookies combined for a 2.44 ERA. This was just their year. It's going to be tough to see if they can run it back next year. Obviously, they have to pay Seager, JT. What would you give their chances of running it back next year, Mitchell? Do you think they got a shot?
I would have to think that they're the overwhelming favorites going into 2021. Yeah, they're going to lose some names in free agency. I don't know if they're going to want to pay Jock to return, which it would be unfortunate to see him go, but understandable. He could start on any number of teams in the big leagues, and he's been platooned for the Dodgers. We'll see if they bring back Kike. He's always been a spark plug for the team. I'm fully confident the Dodgers will re-sign Turner. And, of course, Mookie Betts still has 11 more years of great baseball for the Dodgers. I say at least 60% chance of winning. Anybody coming out of the National League goes through LA. I'd say I give them about a 75% chance to repeat as NL champs.
Not to throw shade at the Dodgers, and I want to legitimately not throw any shade at them. Do they have a good chance of coming back? Yes. I don't think they will because they've been there, like I said, 3 of the past 4 times. It's hard to get to the World Series, let alone win it, and to do it consistently in a sport like baseball that is just so random. 162 games, anything can happen. So while I think they will be favorites and should be favorites, it's literally we're almost not even 24 hours after they just won. So I think it's kind of soon to start predicting for next season. They definitely will be up there, but I don't know. I just don't. Like I said, it's so hard to get into the World Series. So I'm going to just say no.
Yeah, I mean, they barely beat the Braves, and they're not going anywhere. They have a few MVP candidates. The Rockies, they had such a hot start in the beginning of the year. We'll see if they can figure out their pitching. So it's definitely going to be tough.
Let me tell you something, Danny, about the Rockies. We always have a hot start, and then it just craters down into the depths of the ocean. So don't be fooled by the Colorado Rockies. As a 25-year-old Rockies fan, we always have hot starts.
You just expect it now?
Yeah, oh yeah, I expect every time, oh wow, we're first or second in our division. Oh, now we're not even going to make the playoffs. Cool.
Kennedy, I think I'd like to comment on what you said. Yeah, it's tough to get to the World Series, but this team, before they got Mookie Betts, still went to the World Series twice, back-to-back years, nearly won it one time, and they were cheated out of it. Played another cheating team the next year. Granted, the series wasn't close, but it wasn't an even playing field. I look at this Dodgers team as the start of potentially what the Yankees did in the 50s, 60s, and the 90s. I think they're just going to keep going back and back, and anybody who wants to take the Commissioner's Trophy away, they're going to have to take it from the Dodgers. I don't think there's any team better than them. Danny, you said we barely beat Atlanta. I look at it as the Dodgers got down by making mistakes and corrected the ship, then rattled off 3 straight wins to beat a very good team. You have to look at the Dodgers rotation for next year where Buehler's the number 1, where their second best pitcher is Clayton Kershaw. If your second best pitcher is Clayton Kershaw, you also have Urias, May, Gonsolin, and David Price. If your 5th best pitcher is maybe David Price, along with the best offense in baseball, I think there's no doubt that the Dodgers go back year after year after year, despite how hard it is to make it all the way through the postseason.
I've got a quick question for you then, because you were talking about Kershaw winning MVP, but here you said he's like their second best pitcher. Why would he win MVP if he's second best?
Well, MVP would be based on performance, Dom, and Kershaw could have easily won it. He had his best postseason ever with 4 wins in a single postseason. That's the most he's ever done. And he's never had 2 wins in a single playoff series. He did that in the World Series with an immaculate start in Game 1. And even though in Game 5 he didn't have his best stuff, he was a grinder and he made it through and he gave the Dodgers that pivotal 3rd win of the series. But Seager was so red hot the entire time. Mookie was hot the entire time. You could have given it to Muncy, who walked, I think, 15 times just in the World Series. MVP for a series doesn't necessarily reflect on if the player is the best player on the team. Walker Buehler moving forward is going to be the ace of the Dodgers, but Kershaw is going to be the ace in everybody's heart.
So, Mitchell, a thing I wanted to go back and talk to you about is that there's something called the paradox of success, where the more successful a team or a company or whatever becomes successful, the chances of them becoming worse get greater. So you're going to have all these great players who are going to demand all these big-time contracts, all this big-time money, and even if you are the Los Angeles Dodgers, you aren't going to be able to pay all of them. So it's fair to say that the same team isn't going to be there next season. While, they still have a good chance of going to the World Series, it's so darn hard, dude. It's so hard. And I don't think Dodger fans should be upset if they don't. Now, if they don't make it to the playoffs at all, yeah, you may need to start raising some red flags, but they should be, mid postseason, late postseason. And I would, as a Dodger fan, I would say that would be a victory.
Yeah, I mean, great point. As far as the money goes, Dodgers don't have any long-term money on the books until after 2022. Bueller doesn't become a free agent until 2024. Mookie's the only big contract that we're going to have on the books going forward. Yeah, it's not easy to pay all these players, but when you have almost $1 billion in a TV deal with Spectrum, plus it's LA, I think the Dodgers owners are smart enough to take the revenue and put it back into the team. We may need to make sacrifices, but players like Seager and Bueller, I think the Dodgers are going to lock them up long term. They'll be Dodgers the rest of their careers. So if you can keep that core together of those three, eventually Kershaw is going to retire. He's going to be a Dodger for life. Eventually Kenley will contract out, and he won't be a part of the team. I see them giving Turner a 1 to 2 year deal. But the Dodgers are smart. They pick up players that have been cast off by other teams. They're smart with their money. But yeah, they could become too good for their own good.
Yeah, I mean, I remember once they signed Mookie, I remember all Dodgers fans were saying, finally they paid someone. They didn't want to pay Bellinger. They let so many players go. So it's going to be interesting to see who they're going to pay. And like you said, they're good at finding talent. They found Max Muncy. They found Trennan. They found JT. So it should be interesting. But I want to move on to Game 6. I want to move on to Snell and Kevin Cash. Kevin Cash, he's regarded as a manager for making such smart decisions. And then we saw him in the ALCS. He got outmanaged by Dusty Baker. And then he made this questionable call pulling Snell. Mitchell, as a Dodger fan, what was your reaction when he pulled Snell? I mean, Dave Roberts, post-game, he said he was happy. What about as a Dodger fan?
As a fan, I was elated. I was so happy to see him out of the game. If Snell had kept it up, we would be talking about Game 7 tomorrow night after it was played today. From a baseball person perspective, I don't agree with Kevin Cash's move. I think it was detrimental to the Rays, and it probably cost them the game and a chance at a title. When you've got 70-ish pitches in the 6th inning, and you're rolling, in the 5th inning, and you're rolling, he struck out 9 batters. He struck out Mookie Betts twice and Corey Seager twice, the top 2 hitters in the Dodger lineup. I was so happy to see him go. But definitely Cash played by the analytics. If you look at it, 5th inning and on, Blake Snell's ERA is well over 12, which is crazy for such a great pitcher who won the Cy Young in 2018. Unfortunately, with the Rays, they're very analytically built, and they make decisions by the analytics, not by the eye test. Good baseball managing is a little bit of both, which you saw Roberts doing. In the past, he would pull guys based on analytics, but this postseason, he let the hot hand ride. And you could see right there, the Dodgers are champs, and Tampa Bay lost in Game 6.
Mitchell makes a good point when he says the Tampa Bay Rays are very analytical. They've been playing that way for years now. And let's be, it got him to Game 6 of the World Series, playing that exact way, taking Snell out. I think Snell only pitched into the 7th inning this season, a handful of times. Rarely, I don't even think he went into the 8th inning at all this season. So that's just how the Rays have been playing. You take Snell out. Do I think it was the right decision? No. He's struck out 9 of however many batters. My biggest question is, what's the point of paying big money for a manager if you're only going to rely on what the computer's telling you? What I would do if I was a baseball team, I'd fire my big name manager, put some random computer nerd in there, and just have him typing in on a computer just whatever he wants, and then he pulls the lever and, we need to pull our pitcher now, let's do that. Because why are you paying for big time managers if you aren't going to rely on their experience, the eye test as we like to call it? But yeah, I mean, It's easy to rip on the Rays for what they did, but what they were doing got them to the World Series and got them to Game 6 of the World Series. So in hindsight, it's easy to criticize them, but I don't know. For me, analytics has ruined baseball in 3 ways. The first way is the shift. The second way is, just changing so many pitchers so many times. And I can't even remember the third one, but those are the 2. So, yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Kennedy. But I want to go back to Mitchell really quick. You mentioned how Roberts, he went away from the analytics. I mean, that's such a good point because in years past, he was getting pounded. But this year, he stuck with Urias, he stuck with May, he stuck with the hot hand. I mean, I think Roberts just totally outmanaged Kevin Cash this season, or this World Series.
I remembered my third thing that analytics has ruined for baseball, how every bat is all or nothing. You either have to get a home run or a strikeout, because basically what people realize in baseball is all outs are equal to the same. So you can either spend a bunch of energy trying to get all 3 people on the base and then hopefully try to get them run in, or you could just try to swing for the fences, and it doesn't really matter if you strike out because an out is an out.
Yeah. Danny, like you said, Dave Roberts moved away from that analytical approach a little bit. In the past, what we would see in the playoffs is the lineups would flip-flop. You wouldn't know who was going to start. There wasn't any continuity. And it's tough for a player to not know where you're going to hit or where you're going to play on any given day. Roberts in the past has let the front office and the stat heads decide what moves would be made during the game. And he would oftentimes go with the emotional choice. He would play to the narrative. He would want Kershaw to go back out there in the 8th and give it his all and give him that hero moment. And in Game 5, he pulled Kershaw after 2 pitches in the 6th after getting 2 outs when you could have easily left him in. But that's been the Dodgers' downfall. It's leaving the guy in too long. It's making the decision that was analytically based, but not necessarily passing for actually looking what was happening on the field and seeing what was happening right in front of you. The numbers don't tell the complete story. And Kennedy, I agree. Analytics has definitely ruined baseball, and no computer should ever replace a real, genuine scout or manager.
Another thing that I find interesting is that I think we're going to see a fundamental change in how starting pitchers are used. I don't think we're going to see a lot of 7th inning, 8th inning pitchers. I don't care how hot his hand is. It's starting to look like it doesn't make sense to keep pitchers pitching that long. 1, it increases the risk of injury. 2, they're tired. 3, by the 3rd time you've gone through the lineup, they've kind of figured out what your system of pitches is going to be. So it's weird that you're not going to see a lot of starting pitchers pitch to the point where they can earn a win for the season or for that game.
All right, so moving on to the next topic. In the 8th inning, Justin Turner was pulled from the lineup out of nowhere. We didn't know what was going on. Not until after the Dodgers won, they came out with a report saying he tested positive. I mean, and then a few minutes after that, he was on the field with the team taking pictures. Kennedy, what was your reaction to that? What was going on?
Well, my first reaction was oh no, I hope Justin Turner is okay because, empathy. I hope he doesn't have any serious illness. But then literally when they were celebrating, I see his big ginger beard running around on the field, hugging and kissing and shouting and screaming and all sorts of spittle going everywhere. And it's just so irresponsible. I understand you won the championship. I understand you want to celebrate with your team. I understand that a World Series championship may never come to you ever again. So you want to seize the moment and be a part of it. But we're in a pandemic. We literally cut the baseball season down to 60 games because of the pandemic. Both teams were playing in Texas. Now, I don't know, LA and Tampa Bay are not in Texas. Do you know why? Because we were in a pandemic. Dave Roberts was a cancer survivor. You cannot be running around with COVID and it's just so irresponsible. Justin Turner may be asymptomatic, but we don't know what it could happen
right next to Roberts, sitting down
right next to him. right next to him. And he was born in 72, and I can't do quick math right now, but that's old. That is an old guy who, like, again, had cancer. So I don't care that they won. You got to be responsible. Like, it rubs me the wrong way. It's a bad look for baseball. I believe when there's already an investigation going on, and if there are sanctions or punishments for it, it'll ironically be less than what the Astros got for cheating their way to victory.
I think it's got to be a huge punishment. I think the Dodgers they're going to get hit hard. I mean, I'm sure that MLB, I'm pretty sure they just said, they asked the Dodgers, if you guys want him to go on the field, go ahead. I'm guessing that's how it went. Mitchell, what was your reaction to that?
Well, yeah, I agree with you, Kennedy. Optics of it, not great. Does it put everybody in danger? No more than it did by having him on the field to begin with. He was already in contact with the entire team and the opposing team too. The problem here is not that the test came back negative, or positive. It's that the test came back during the game. It didn't come back before. Rob Manfred instituted a plan where they test the players, then fly those samples to Utah and wait for them to be tested and then have the results come back. The first test came back inconclusive, and the precedent this entire season has been, if it's inconclusive, it generally has led to a negative test. That being said, they didn't want to hold out Turner in a potential World Series clinching game. From my understanding and from the reports that I've read, Turner was asked by Major League Baseball officials not to go back onto the field, but the Dodgers organization and front office advocated for him to come back out there to celebrate with his team and to take the picture. In post-game interviews, there was not a single player from the Dodgers that disagreed with Turner's decision to come back onto the field. Later on today, a report came that they did test everybody on the Dodgers, including their family and all the staff, as well as everybody from the Tampa Bay Rays. Everybody except for Turner and his wife came back negative for COVID, and they were all cleared to fly home. I understand that he's been working really hard to get to this point. I can't blame the guy for wanting to go out there and celebrate with his team. He's a grown man. Can't really tell him what to do. And everybody's already been exposed to him for several hours, if not days. They've all been living in the same bubble. So I'm glad that everybody came back negative. That was not Justin Turner. And for Justin Turner, congrats, man, for winning the World Series. And I hope you recover from this soon.
That's a good point, Mitchell, that you make. Justin Turner is a grown man, and he kind of acted like a child. He wasn't responsible. He didn't say, oh, I have a sickness, I have an illness that even scientists don't know what's going to happen years and years from now once you catch this. So yeah, he is a grown man, and he acted like a child. Imagine if he infected half the Dodgers and the Tampa Bay had won Game 6. What do we do for Game 7? What did the Dodgers do for Game 7? Do we postpone Game 7 of the World Series because Justin Turner was irresponsible? Now, I don't blame Justin Turner up until inning 8 because he didn't know he had COVID. You can't really blame him for that. But once you know, like, you got to be better than that.
Yeah, I agree. You got to be better. I think it'll serve as kind of an example of how Major League Baseball needs to run next season. Most teams play in a large metropolitan area where there are great medical facilities that are more than capable of doing the COVID testing. So it doesn't have to be outsourced to one place in the country where tons of other people are sending their tests as well. You say that he acted like a child. I think he acted like a grown man when the team made a team decision that they wanted him out there. They knew the risk that they were taking by having him out there. And yeah, we don't know what the side effects will be years down the line, but championships don't always come around. And I think he had to seize this opportunity to go out there with his team. Was it irresponsible? Maybe. I think the media and maybe us a little bit, I think we're making a mountain out of a little molehill right here. yeah, he was already around everybody. So they were already exposed to him. So I don't see the harm in him going back out there.
But you're just further exposing the people. It like we could argue about this for a while. I think we agree that it's just not a good look what Justin Turner did. By the way, he's still going to be a World Series championship whether or not he goes and celebrates with the team. He's still going to be a World Series champion during whenever LA hosts the Dodgers parade. He's still, I mean, they can't be like, oh, well, you weren't celebrating with your team on the field, Justin. I'm sorry, but we kind of have to take World Series right now. Yeah, I mean, but like, are we going to be shocked that the Dodgers wanted Justin Turner on the field with them? Of course they did. That, you know, when you win, you're obviously not thinking clearly. You're only thinking about, oh my gosh, I just did what I've been dreaming since I was a child to do. But it was very irresponsible, especially with the disease that we honestly have no idea what it will and can do.
It's just tough because, I mean, Turner, he's been on the team for, I think, like 7-8 years. He's been through the run. I mean, for this to happen to him especially, I mean, this just sucks. But, I mean, give credit to the MLB, Mitchell, a little bit. I mean, they had a you know, kind of a mess with the Cardinals, Marlins in the beginning of the season. And then I think they went like 60 days without a positive test. So, I mean, it just sucks that it had to happen. Game 6 of the World Series, mid-game. But I want to get into our final topic of the day. Does this 60-game season, does this entire 2020 season have an asterisk on it? I mean, it's a tough situation they were put in, but once again, it was only 60 games. I think last season, the 2019 Nationals, they were like 500 midway. I mean, a team could have broke through. Does this championship count, Mitchell?
Championship is 100% valid. Don't slap an asterisk on it. Nobody cheated their way to this title. These players had to go through just an experience that nobody could have foreseen, with having to bubble away from their families for quite a long time, not playing with fans in the stands, having to play with extra safety protocol, and even just like a couple rule changes too. Everybody played by the same rules this year. If anything, it was a tougher mental grind for these Major League Baseball players, and a lot of good has come out of this season. I think we'll see a universal DH starting next season, giving new life to players who may not have gotten that big contract that they so rightly deserved. And yeah, Danny, great point about the Nationals last year. The White Sox, Padres, Marlins, and Reds all broke postseason dry spells for more than 10 plus years. That's something to be proud of. I think it's a changing of the guard. We had an expanded playoff. I think 60 games is too short for a season, but given the conditions, I think it's 100% valid as a championship.
Mitchell's absolutely right. It's 100% a valid championship. Everyone played 60 games, with the exception of some COVID, people missing COVID games. Everyone played by the same rules. Everyone had the same opportunity to make it to the World Series, and the best team won. Before we had this pandemic, all the odds were saying, Dodgers were in the top 4, if not the top, for being considered for the championship. Let me give you an example of when a championship would be an asterisk. So during this 2000 Sydney Paralympic Games, the Spanish Paralympic team, the basketball team, had 10 out of the 12 people playing on the game had no mental disability whatsoever. So unless the Dodgers, 23 of the 25 players had literal cyborgs that were not human playing on the team, absolutely it counts.
It counts way more than the Astros in 2017. Put some respect on the Dodgers. They've earned it.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, if we're not going to give an official asterisk to the Astros who cheated their way to victory, why would we take away, the Dodgers for winning it? So it's a championship. Same with the NBA, same with the NHL. And I don't think really anyone's going to be asking if the Super Bowl champion deserves an asterisk, because we're basically getting the same season from the NFL. So no, this is a weird time. This is an unprecedented time. It's not the Dodgers' fault that there's COVID. So yeah, it's a championship. Get over it.
What a fun season. I mean, the 60-game season, this new playoff format, the 3-inning rule, the DH. It was just such a fun season to watch. This brings me to my next point. Kenny, do you think they should shorten the regular season? I know we touched on it maybe last week or 2 weeks ago. I want to bring it up again. Do you think that they should consider shortening the amount of regular season games?
I do. How many games they need to do, I don't know. Let's say you cut out 62 and make it just 100 games. Now you have to decide, do we not have spring training, or do we not have, or does the postseason not go into October? And since you have a literal man named Mr. October, you got to have the playoffs in October. So basically you take away spring training. You can call it something fun like summer camp. Everyone goes to summer camp and has fun. But this is the most excited that I personally have been for a baseball season. And the main reason is because Game 71 between the Padres and the Mets, who no one cares about, wasn't playing. Every game mattered more. Every game mattered. And so the teams tried harder. We had, fans watching. This was, if you look at the ratings, this is one of the highest rated postseasons that the MLB has had in years. It only makes sense to shorten the season. No one wants to watch 162 games except for the diehard baseball purists. And for them, I say, your average age of attendance or people viewership is in the mid-50s. The people who enjoy that type of baseball are going to be dead soon. You got to find a way for young people to watch your sport. And 160 games is just too much.
And like you said about spring training, if they take that away, the NFL, they went without preseason for the first time in like forever. And I mean, the players don't even need preseason. I mean, they're seeing injuries. It's obviously different with the NFL. I don't think no spring training is going to affect the MLB as much as it does to the NFL players who, they're in such a high contact sport. Mitchell, what do you think about a shortened regular season?
Well, first, I completely disagree on spring training. If anything, spring training needs to be longer for these players to get fully acclimated to the long schedule. Yes, MLB needs to shorten the regular season. To what amount of games? I'm not sure. I'd be okay with anything as low as 120. I thought the 60-game sprint was fun. I think that you could expand spring training for really the pitchers. It's protecting the pitchers to make sure their arms are ready to go out there and throw 100 every night. But we're not going to see such a drastic shift. A lot of what made baseball more fun and exciting this year was the universal DH. Nobody needs to see a pitcher go up to bat when they know it's just a wasted at bat and it's going to be an out. I understand, myself included, I am a baseball purist. I believe that having no DH in the National League creates more strategy and makes the game more interesting. But I'm not the casual fan. I'm not the average fan. And if we want to boost our ratings and bring up the revenue, the DH needs to come into play. The regular season needs to be shortened a little bit. I'm a fan of an expanded playoff, but I don't like teams getting in that have a losing record. Maybe with a longer season, we won't see a losing record in the playoffs, even if it is expanded. Another thing that they could try, I know they have a mid-season all-star game. What about an end of the season all-star game for all the teams that didn't make the playoffs? Send their star players to the all-star game. Do an end-of-the-season home run derby. Anything to engage our young fans, I think, is a good thing for baseball.
If I'm a star sitting on the beaches of Cancun and Rob Manfred calls me and asks if I want to participate in an end-of-season home run contest, I am hanging up the phone faster than I picked it up. There is no way that any star player would want to play an end-of-season all-star game. But, Mitchell, I'm not saying we get rid of spring training. I'm just saying you cut out maybe 2.5 months of the regular season, move spring training to summer, call it summer camp because that's fun. And you still have the spring training. You still have the preparation that you need for the pitchers, for the position players. It's just that no one can pay attention to 162 games. Back when baseball was the only sport and only entertainment to do other than go fight Germans in Europe, you kind of needed 162 games. But there's so many things to be competing with. There's so many other sports. It's like it needs to happen. It needs to change. And I don't think we are going to see a reduction in the games, but I agree with you. We're going to see the DH. I think what will be interesting is when I have to sneeze, so I don't know when it's going to happen. I think what would be interesting if they kept the double header rule, the 7-inning double header. I personally enjoyed that because you get to watch 2 full baseball games in like 3.5 hours. It was nice. By the time the second game's going on, you're like, wow, the first game ended. So I don't know. I think there needs to be an.
Sorry to cut you off. Putting a runner on second in the extra innings, that was also a fun addition that they did. That made it so much more exciting, so much more strategy. You can continue, Kennedy.
Well, that's another thing that I think that's one of the more probable changes that we will see. Even though from all the players that, especially pitchers, hate having a person on second, understandably, but I could see the DH rule changing. I could see in this order. Number 1 would be universal DH, then second or person on second base during extra innings, and then third would be the 7-inning doubleheaders. After that, I mean, I really don't see baseball changing.
I think baseball needs to adapt to grow their audience. The NBA is so fun. It's got a lot of young fans. I don't necessarily think the NFL is all that, but I can understand the appeal. The extra inning rule, I'm not a big fan of it, but I could see how a lot of people would be. Instead of having a really long 13-inning game, you start with a runner on second, and maybe it's only 10, you save the arms, and it's just better overall.
Another thing that they need to do to attract young fans is let the stars have personalities. The biggest star in the MLB is Mike Trout. And if Mike Trout was shopping for bread at your grocery store, you wouldn't be able to recognize him. He has such a plain face and no personality. We need more Tatis Juniors. We need more bat flips. The more bat flips we get, the better. But the problem is every time you flip your bat, the pitcher gets so offended that you dare hit his baseball that he's going to throw a 99 miles per hour fastball at your friend's head. So like we need to change the unwritten rules of baseball, the sanctity of the cathedral that is the baseball. It needs to change. They need to let their players have more personality. One of the things I thought that they did that was good, and I can't remember if this was spring training or last season, but they mic'd up certain players. And they would have conversations with the players while they are playing, because baseball allows you to do that. There's so much downtime. And I learned a lot of things, like what an outfielder looks for, when a shift, what a batter's looking for, what kind of pitches he needs to be, it was interesting. So there needs to be something new with MLB.
That's such a good point, because Machado chuck his bat at the dugout. As much as I don't like Machado, I mean, that's exciting. That's fun to watch. And I want to see pitchers do that too. I feel like Gratterall on the Dodgers, he's the only player that the pitcher I see, he's doing like he's pointing to the baseball gods. I want to see pitchers do that. I want to see them yelling. It's fun to watch.
Well, yeah, that builds on. I kind of wanted to ask you about this, Mitchell, and you, Kennedy, and you too, Danny. You were talking about the All-Star Game and the Home Run Derby, and that's incredibly fun to watch. And you guys were talking earlier about the Dodgers and the Rays being Moneyball teams. Do you think that, even though, Kennedy, you feel like if they're calling you on the beaches of Cancun, you're hanging up, do you feel that would allow them to then develop some of these big players into stars? Like, what's the guy at the Home Run Derby who hit like a ton of oh my God, what's his name? Help me out. Toronto Blue Jays.
Vlad Guerrero Jr.
No, Vlad Guerrero Jr. Thank you. And that was amazing to watch. I went back and watched that like 5 times, him hit all those home runs. Do you think like that would help bring more kids into baseball, seeing these like kind of amazing feats?
I think that you grow the young fans by giving them something to get excited about. So yeah, if there were 2 home run derbies, that would be great. Like, I would not complain about 2 home run derbies. Kennedy, like you said, the miking up of the players, I think that's great. In the All-Star game, in spring training, I thought it was awful, terrible that Fox said, yeah, let's mic up Justin Turner during the playoffs. Bad idea. The playoffs is when the players need to be at their fullest attention to the game. if we're going to grow the game and give our young players a platform, MLB needs to get some camera crews in there, get content that could be posted on MLB. Why am I only seeing Mike Trout highlights, Cody Bellinger highlights? I don't want to see highlights all the time. Give me a day in the life of Fernando Tatis Jr. Take me from his wake up to his BP to his workout to right before the game, and then give me his post-game routine. I want to see that. I want to see how Acuna gets ready to step in the box against a 100-mile-an-hour pitcher. That's what I want to see.
So, Dom, I think the biggest problem that MLB has is their star power, which is weird because they have a lot of stars. I know that's kind of a contradiction statement, but you're not allowed to have personality in the MLB. If you hit a home run, you're supposed to calmly run around the bases as fast as you can, and if you take any time to celebrate or show any emotion other than slight joy, you're endangering your teammate, your friend, because 99% of the time a pitcher's going to throw a fastball at his head. We need to change those rules. We need to, like Mitchell says, just give more opportunities for baseball players to show them as, human beings, because that's what we really connect to. We connect to the human being part of it. We connect to the celebration, the joy, the suffering, the agony. We see that in them, and therefore we see it in ourselves. So it's just, a lot's got to change for MLB, and I think they, in a weird way, they kind of got lucky that this was a 60-game season because a lot more people were interested, but they're not really going to get that opportunity again. So they really need to think of something. But Mitchell, you didn't like I understand for the playoffs, you don't have, because honestly, playoff baseball is the most exciting part of baseball because the games have stakes. And I don't think you'd find a single team that goes, oh yeah, mic up our players during playoff baseball. But spring training, you got to have it, and you got to have it in Game 71, Padres Cardinals.
Yeah, I mean, anything to grow the game, I'll be a fan of. Just don't mic up my guy at third base during the playoffs.
I think we should add hazards in the outfield for different, and each stadium has a different hazard. Like you could have a moat filled with crocodiles in one. You could have the warning track by the warning track. You could just have a trampoline so you can just jump up and grab. So, but each stadium would be different, kind of like how you have the Big Green Monster, and it'd be fun.
Houston used to have a hill in center field
that's the most wacky that the MLB has ever gotten.
Man, you guys were not missing. I mean, those were just great points. Like you said, Mitchell, the MLB just needs to do better marketing their players. I mean, I see day in the lives with tons of NBA players. I see them posting, I don't know if you guys have seen their videos, like 10 things I can't live without. These are viral videos that, they give personality to their players. And unfortunately, the miking them up at third base, that kind of worked. That kind of gave fans a face to put Justin Turner to. So we're going to wrap it up here. Anything else to touch on?
Back to the regularly scheduled overload of the NFL, I suppose.
Yep, I just got to say it one more time. 2020 MLB champions, Los Angeles Dodgers. That just sounds so good, right, Kennedy? That sounds so good.
I mean, you got to add an asterisk to it, so,
Hey, whoa. All right, now he's going back on his word. Thank you guys for watching. My name is Danny Stepanovich. Once again, you can find me at dstepanovich on Twitter, Instagram, themoorparkreporter.com. Mitchell Ross, Kennedy Collier. Where can they find you, Mitchell?
You can find me at Mitch Ross Report on all social medias, also on the Moorpark Reporter website, as well as Medium.
And you can find me on the Moorpark Reporter site and on Twitter at Kennedy C. Collier. So I don't tweet, so don't follow me, but that's where you can find me.
All right. Hey, we got him on Twitter.
I've been on Twitter. I just didn't want you guys to know that I was on Twitter.
It's your burner?
Yeah, it's where I do all my drug deals.
Once again, shout out to our engineer, Dom. And we'll catch you back on our regular scheduled episode next week. Thanks for watching.